They act like they don't care. They push you away. They make you feel invisible. But deep down, there's one person they can't resist. The one who doesn't chase. The one who won't beg. The one who stands still while they run. And that's when the avoidant becomes obsessed. Avoidants live in a paradox. They crave connection, but they fear it at the same time. Their nervous system is wired to retreat, to create distance whenever intimacy feels too close. This isn't about you. It isn't about your worth. It's about survival, because closeness feels dangerous to them. And so, they run. But here's the secret. Running only works if you chase. When you chase, the avoidant feels powerful. They control the rhythm. They decide when to give and when to withdraw. They become the one holding the rope, while you scramble to hold on. But when you stop chasing, when you refuse to play the game, everything inside them shifts. Their nervous system, which was once screaming too close, now begins to whisper too far. This is the hidden law of avoidant attraction. They are drawn not to the ones who prove love, but to the ones who remain steady, unbothered, whole. Imagine this. You're dating someone with avoidant tendencies. At first, they're charming, magnetic. They pursue you with intensity. But the moment your heart opens, the moment you show vulnerability, they begin to pull away. Suddenly, work becomes too busy. Friends become more important. Hobbies become their escape. And you feel yourself slipping lower on their list. Your natural instinct? To chase, to call more, to ask what's wrong, to prove that you're worthy of their time. But here's the twist. The more you chase, the less they see you, the more invisible you become. Because chasing confirms their deepest fear. That love means pressure. That intimacy means being trapped. That closeness means suffocation. So they run further, until you're exhausted, until you feel unwanted, until you almost believe you don't matter. But what happens if you stop? If you stand still? If you allow the rope to drop? This is where the avoidant feels something they cannot ignore. A hollow emptiness, a silence they didn't expect, a distance that suddenly feels too far. Because as much as they run, they don't actually want to be alone. They want to feel wanted. They want to feel safe without being smothered. They want connection on their terms. And when you refuse to chase, they're forced to confront the reality. You're not dependent on them. You're not begging for scraps. You're not twisting yourself into knots just to stay. You are whole, with or without them. And that's the paradox that captures the avoidant. They are drawn, almost magnetically, to the one who doesn't bend, the one who doesn't plead, the one who won't beg for love that should be given freely. Because suddenly, they feel the fear of loss. They feel the reality of your absence. They realize that you were not holding on for them, but for yourself. And that is when the obsession begins. Think about it like this. If you're always running after someone, they never have to look back. They know you'll be there. They know you'll fill the silence. They know you'll hold the relationship together. But if you stop, they have no choice but to look back, to see if you're still there, to realize that you won't chase forever. This is when the avoidant begins to watch you closely, to notice your distance, to sense your strength, to question whether they've lost something irreplaceable. And that's where attraction grows, not from your chasing, but from your absence, from your refusal to fight for crumbs, from your choice to stay grounded in your worth. When you stop chasing, you break the cycle, you shatter the dynamic, and the avoidant is left face to face with themselves. For the first time, they see you not as a pursuer, but as a mirror, reflecting back their own fears, their own patterns, their own inability to hold love when it's safe. And ironically, this is what makes them want you more, because the one who doesn't chase becomes the one they can't stop thinking about. This isn't a game. It's not manipulation. It's alignment. When you stop chasing, you step out of the trap. You reclaim your power, and you remind the avoidant of something they've been running from. That love is a choice, that you are not an option, that you will not be dragged into the cycle of fear. And that is why avoidants are drawn to the one who won't chase. When you stop chasing the avoidant, something profound happens inside them. At first, they may feel relief. They may even convince themselves that this is what they wanted all along. Freedom, space, no pressure, no demands. They tell themselves, this is better, this is safer, this is exactly what I needed. But the nervous system has its own memory, its own rhythm, its own truth. And the truth is, human beings are wired for connection, even the avoidant, especially the avoidant. Avoidants learned, early on, that closeness was unsafe, that love could suffocate, that vulnerability was dangerous. Maybe a parent was unpredictable. Maybe affection came with strings attached. Maybe warmth was given one day and ripped away the next. So the child learned to armor up, to push down needs, to hide feelings, to create safety by creating distance. This became their survival code. And even as adults, they follow it without even realizing it. But here's the paradox. The very strategy that protects them is also the one that isolates them. They long for intimacy. They want love. They want connection. But they've wired themselves to run from it. So when you chase, you feed the fear. You reinforce the story. Closeness equals pressure. But when you stop chasing, something cracks open. Because now, the avoidance nervous system feels the opposite. It doesn't feel suffocated. It feels the loss. It feels the absence. And absence is what pulls them closer. Think about this carefully. When you were chasing them, they didn't have to notice you. You were always there, available, present, predictable. But now, there's silence. No text, no reassurance, no constant reminders of your devotion. And silence for the avoidant is not peace, it's disruption. Because the avoidant was used to being the one in control, used to being the one who decided when connection happened and when it was cut off. But when you step back, you flip the script. They no longer hold all the power. This is where attraction grows in them. Not because you're withholding love, but because you're embodying strength. You're showing that you exist outside of their approval, that your identity is not tethered to their attention. And to the avoidant, that's magnetic. Imagine this scene. The avoidant scrolls through their phone. They notice you haven't messaged. No good morning, no check-ins, no asking when they'll be free. At first, they may smirk. Finally, some space. But by day 3, the silence feels heavy. By day 5, they're wondering what you're doing. By day 7, they're checking your socials. And soon, they're feeling a strange mix of emotions. Curiosity, anxiety, jealousy, longing, all because you refuse to chase. This is not about games. This is about nervous system balance. When you stop running after them, you give their system space to breathe, space to feel their own emotions, space to recognize what's missing. Because here's the truth. Avoidants may run, but they don't want to be forgotten. They don't want to be erased. They want to be free, and want it at the same time. And the only way they realize this is when the wanting stops coming from you. This is why they're drawn to the one who won't chase. Because that person embodies what they cannot. Stability, self-trust, groundedness. When you're not chasing, you're showing them, not telling them. That love is not about pursuit. It's about presence. You exist in your own center. And whether they step closer or pull away, you remain whole. This unsettles the avoidant, but it also attracts them. because secretly, they wish they had that same groundedness, that same ability to feel emotions without drowning in them. And so, paradoxically, your refusal to chase is the very thing that pulls them back. Let's go even deeper. Every relationship has a dance, a rhythm of approach and retreat. With avoidance, the dance often looks like this. They pursue, then they pull away. You feel the gap. You chase. They retreat further. You chase harder. They feel trapped. They run. It's a cycle, one that can last months, even years. But when you stop chasing, you break the dance. You stop feeding the pattern. And now the avoidant is left alone, on the dance floor, unsure of the next move. This is uncomfortable for them, but it's also the only way they grow. Because without your chasing, they must confront their own feelings. They must notice their own desire. They must choose, instead of simply reacting. And here's the fascinating part. When you stop chasing, you don't just create attraction, you create respect. The avoidant begins to see you differently, not as someone who bends to their rhythms, not as someone who waits on their call, but as someone who knows their worth, someone who values their peace, someone who won't settle for half love. And that respect is what makes love sustainable. Because without respect, love turns into control. But with respect, love has space to breathe. So when you refuse to chase, you're not rejecting the avoidant. You're inviting them into a relationship that's built on choice, not fear. And here's the paradox again. That's what avoidants secretly crave. A love that's not forced. A love that doesn't pressure. A love that allows them to step forward because they want to, not because they're being pulled. And when they realize this, they begin to see you as the one they can't let go of. Because in your stillness, they find something rare, a love that doesn't chase, and a person who doesn't collapse, just to keep them close. That's why avoidants are so often drawn, not to the loudest pursuer, but to the quiet strength of the one who doesn't chase. Because deep down, that's the one who shows them what love without fear can look like. When the avoidant feels your absence, they begin to notice something they've been running from their whole life. Need, longing, desire, not just for anyone, but for you. Because when you step back, you don't just disappear. You reveal their attachment system. You awaken the part of them that has been numbed for years. Let's slow this down. Avoidants often confuse two feelings: relief and safety, distance and freedom. They think pushing you away gives them peace. They think avoiding conflict keeps them secure. They think ignoring their emotions keeps them strong. But all of that is an illusion, because real safety doesn't come from shutting down. It comes from connection, from being seen, and not punished for it. So when you stop chasing, you don't punish them. You mirror something back to them. That love is not about pursuit. That intimacy is not about pressure. That space doesn't mean abandonment. This is subtle, but powerful, because the avoidant starts to feel something unusual. They feel both freedom and attraction. They feel both space and pull. And those two forces collide inside them. At first, this feels unbearable. The avoidant may try to resist it. They may distract themselves. They may lean harder into work, hobbies, even casual flings. But none of it sticks, because no distraction has the same weight as your silence. They notice your absence everywhere, in their routines, in their quiet moments, in their late night scrolling. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow they can't outrun. Why? Because for once, they are not the one controlling the dynamic. When you chased, they dictated the rhythm. When you stop, you reclaim your power, and the avoidant feels it, not as rejection, but as a shift that forces them to look inward, a shift that unsettles them, a shift that whispers, "You may lose this if you don't move." This is the paradox of human connection. The more you cling, the more someone pulls back. The more you let go, the more someone feels drawn in. Avoidants are not immune to this law. They are, in fact, deeply sensitive to it, because their whole defense system is built on one fear, the fear of being consumed. But when you stop chasing, you disarm that fear. You show them, without words, that your love doesn't suffocate. It breathes. Now here's the fascinating part. The avoidant starts to wonder about you, not in the shallow way they did before, but in a deeper, unsettled way. Why aren't they texting me? Did they lose interest? Are they seeing someone else? Were they really that strong all along? Notice something here. These are not questions born from logic. They are questions born from feeling. And for the avoidant, feeling is what they run from. But now, your stillness has made them feel. And once they start, they can't unfeel it. This is where attraction turns magnetic. Not because you're playing a game, not because you're withholding on purpose, but because you've stepped into self-respect. And self-respect is the ultimate gravity. Avoidants are often attracted to people who embody what they lack: groundedness, patience, consistency. But they test it. They push against it. They withdraw from it to see if it holds. And when you stop chasing, you prove that it does, that your center doesn't crumble. When they retreat, that your love has strength, not desperation. Think of it this way. If love is a fire, the anxious person tries to keep it alive by throwing in wood constantly, but the avoidant feels smothered by the smoke. When you stop chasing, you don't throw in more wood. You simply let the fire breathe. And in that oxygen, the flame burns stronger. This is how attraction grows, not in the noise of pursuit, but in the quiet of balance. But let's go even deeper. Why is the avoidant so drawn to the one who won't chase? Because it challenges their core wound. Their wound says, if I let someone close, I'll lose myself. Your refusal to chase says, I can love you without losing me. That's revolutionary to them. It shows them a version of love they've never known. A love that isn't hungry. A love that isn't clinging. A love that stands tall. At first, they may resist this. They may even test you, pulling back harder, waiting to see if you'll break. But when you hold steady, they begin to see something different. That you're not like the others. That you're not trapped in the same cycle. That you don't define yourself by their approval. And to the avoidant, that's rare. That's irresistible. But here's what most people miss. The avoidant doesn't just want love. They want safety in love. Safety to come close without losing their identity. Safety to step back without being punished. Safety to feel without being overwhelmed. And when you stop chasing, you create that safety, not by forcing it, not by begging for it, but by embodying it. Your stillness becomes their safety. Your self-trust becomes their anchor. And slowly, the avoidant begins to see you, not as a threat, but as a refuge. This is why they return, not because you begged, not because you convinced, but because your silence revealed what they truly wanted. A connection that breathes, a love that doesn't smother, a partner who doesn't disappear into them, but stands beside them. And that's why avoidants are attracted to the one who won't chase, because that person represents a new way of loving, one that doesn't activate their fear, but instead calms it, one that doesn't demand, but inspires, one that doesn't suffocate, but invites. And once they taste that, they can't forget it. Here's the truth most people don't see. Avoidants don't actually fear love. They fear what they think love demands. They've been conditioned to believe that love is loss of self, that intimacy is invasion, That closeness means suffocation. So, when you chase them, you unknowingly prove their fear right. Your pursuit, even if it's born from care, feels like pressure, feels like demand, feels like the cage they've always run from. But when you stop chasing, something flips inside them. They don't feel trapped anymore. They feel choice. And choice to an avoidant is everything. Because their deepest craving is not just for connection, it's for connection they choose. When you step back, you don't withdraw love, you restore choice. And in that choice, they begin to feel something they've long buried: desire. Let's dig deeper. Attraction isn't built in pursuit, it's built in curiosity. And curiosity can only survive when there is mystery. Avoidants pull back to protect themselves, but in pulling back, they also crave the unknown. So when you don't chase, you become the mystery. They start asking, why aren't they running after me? Why do they seem fine without me? Did they move on? This curiosity grows, and curiosity is the seed of attraction. Now, here's where it gets powerful. The avoidance obsession doesn't start in your presence. It starts in your absence. When you stop filling the silence, they start hearing their own thoughts. When you stop running after them, they start running into themselves. And what they find there is need. A need they cannot admit. A need they cannot erase. Your absence becomes the mirror they can't look away from. Think about it. When someone chases us, we focus on them. But when someone steps back, we're forced to focus inward. That's what happens to the avoidant. They're forced to feel the ache they've been numbing for years. And suddenly, the story changes. It's no longer about, you're too much for me. It becomes, why do I feel so much without you? That shift is everything. But here's where it gets complicated. The avoidant may not rush back right away. Why? Because admitting their need feels like surrender. It feels like weakness. It feels like giving up the one power they've always clung to: control. So instead of reaching out, they linger. They watch. They circle. They may check your social media. They may ask about you indirectly. They may find subtle ways to stay tethered to you without confessing they care. This isn't because they don't feel. It's because they feel too much. But here's the paradox. The longer they watch from afar, the stronger the obsession grows. Because obsession thrives in distance. It thrives in mystery. It thrives in unanswered questions. And your stillness provides all three. They're drawn to you, not because you chased, but because you didn't. Because you refused to collapse into them. Because you stood steady. Because you embodied the one thing their nervous system both fears and craves: secure love. Now let's zoom out for a moment. What do avoidants actually want? They want love without losing identity. They want closeness without pressure. They want intimacy without engulfment. But here's the twist. They don't even know how to ask for it. They test for it instead. They push away. They retreat. They wait to see if you'll chase. When you chase, you confirm their fear. See, closeness equals pressure. When you don't, you disarm it. Wait, maybe closeness can breathe. And in that breathing space, desire grows. Think of it like this. If love is a song, most people try to sing it louder, to be heard. But with the avoidant, the song that moves them is silence between the notes. When you stop chasing, you create that silence, that stillness, that pause. And in that pause, they finally hear the music. Not noise, not demand, but rhythm. A rhythm they can join without fear of being drowned out. This is why avoidants are drawn to the ones who don't chase. Because those people don't collapse under pressure. They don't beg for scraps. They don't confuse love with pursuit. They embody something else, something magnetic, something grounding. a love that stands, a love that waits, a love that breathes. But let's be real. This doesn't mean the avoidant suddenly becomes secure. It doesn't mean they rush into your arms, ready to heal everything. Their defenses are still there. Their fears are still loud. Their wounds are still raw. But now, for the first time, they feel conflicted because what they want and what they fear are the same thing. You. That's why they linger. That's why they circle. That's why they can't let you go. Because you represent the one thing their nervous system has been searching for all along. Love that doesn't trap. Love that doesn't consume. Love that lets them breathe. And no matter how far they run, they can't outrun that truth. So when you stop chasing, you don't just free yourself. You awaken them. You awaken their curiosity. You awaken their longing. You awaken the part of them they swore they buried. And that awakening is what keeps them circling back. And that's why avoidants are pulled to the one who won't chase. Not because it's a game, not because of reverse psychology, but because in your stillness, they discover the one thing they didn't believe was possible: love without losing themselves. Here's the irony. The avoidant spends their whole life running from love, and yet, what they end up circling back to is the one who gave them love without chasing, because chasing feels like pressure, but stillness feels like safety. When you stop chasing, you do more than pull back. You show them something they never believed existed. Love that doesn't demand. Love that doesn't suffocate. Love that doesn't punish. For the avoidant, this is revolutionary. It's not just attractive. It's unforgettable. But let's slow down here. You are not their savior. You are not their fixer. You are not their therapist. It is not your job to hold space for their wounds forever. Yes, your stillness can awaken them. Yes, it can draw them closer. Yes, it can spark desire. But healing? That is their work, not yours. And this is where many people make the mistake. They see the avoidant circle back. They feel the renewed pull. They see the sparks reignite. And they think, this time, it will be different. But without self-awareness, without healing, without accountability, the cycle repeats. They run. You chase. They retreat. You hurt. So what do? You hold your ground. You remember the truth. Love without chasing is not a tactic. It is a boundary. It is you saying, I will not lose myself for love. I will not beg for crumbs. I will not collapse into your fear. That strength is what makes you magnetic. And that strength is what keeps you free. Now let's go deeper. Why does the avoidance attraction intensify when you stop chasing? Because the one thing their nervous system fears most is the one thing they secretly crave most: true intimacy. But intimacy without choice feels like a trap. Intimacy without freedom feels like death. So when you stand still, when you let them come to you, you show them intimacy. Doesn't have to mean loss. It can mean freedom. It can mean breathing. It can mean choosing. And that discovery, it shakes their entire system. But here's the truth most won't tell you. Not every avoidant will step into that discovery. Some will stay stuck in their fear. Some will keep running. Some will circle endlessly without ever landing. And that is not your failure. That is their choice. So your task is not to wait forever. Your task is not to prove your love endlessly. Your task is simple: to embody the kind of love that does not chase, that does not beg, that does not collapse. The kind of love that stands tall, that breathes, that waits, but never waits forever. Because here's the secret: the power of not chasing isn't about what it does to them. It's about what it does to you. It restores your dignity. It rebuilds your self-worth. It teaches you the truth. Real love doesn't demand pursuit. Real love doesn't punish absence. Real love doesn't hide in distance. Real love meets you. And if the avoidant cannot meet you there, then they are not ready. Not for you. Not for love. Not for the kind of connection that could heal them. And that's okay, because your worth is not measured by who can hold it. Your worth is unshakable, unmoving, unchanged. So here's what I want you to take away. Yes, avoidants are attracted to the ones who don't chase. Yes, they circle back when you stop running after them. But the real power isn't in their return. It's in your freedom. The freedom to love without losing yourself. The freedom to let go without collapsing. The freedom to walk away, knowing you were always enough. That's the kind of love that changes everything. That's the kind of love that keeps you steady. That's the kind of love that turns your absence into their awakening. And maybe, just maybe, that's the love that teaches them that intimacy doesn't have to suffocate, that closeness doesn't have to destroy, that love doesn't have to mean loss. But whether they learn it or not, you've already won, because you found the strength to love without chasing. And that's the most magnetic thing you could ever carry. If this message hit home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more truths about love, attachment, and healing, because your story matters, and your healing starts here.